In 1988, Bloodsport hit the screen. Like a roundhouse to the face! This guy legitimately fought in underground death tournaments. So if you like slow motion screams and can handle watching grown men do split kicks all day long, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive into the chaos. Because it's time for Bloodsport! Welcome to Video Rental Chaos! And welcome to Bloodsport, where Jean-Claude Van Damme spends more time doing splits than actually talking. It's the true story of one man who somehow became a fighting legend just by looking dramatic while kicking people slow motion in the air. So before I get a bloody nose, let's jump right on into Bloodsport. We are introduced to U.S. Army Captain Frank Dukes, and we quickly learn that he has been invited to participate in the Kumite in Hong Kong. The US government finds out about this and wants to stop him from traveling to the illegal tournament. After escaping the army, Frank pays a quick visit to his sensei, who has fallen ill. We then get the background of Frank's story. As a child, he broke into a home with two other boys. Frank was caught holding a katana, but instead of calling the cops, Senzo Tanaka chooses to train Frank alongside his own son Shingo. Later, Shingo tragically dies and Tanaka continues to train Frank, ultimately accepting him as a full member of the Tanaka family. With his past revealed, Frank heads to Hong Kong for the Kumite. Meanwhile, the US government hasn't given up. Two Criminal Investigation Division agents, Helmer and Rollins, to track him down. Once in Hong Kong, Frank quickly befriends another American, the El Tudo fighter Ray Jackson. They meet their local guide Victor Lin, who helps them navigate the city. When they arrive at the tournament, they must prove they're worthy of their invitations. Frank demonstrates his skills by performing the Dim Mak, the death touch. On the first day of the tournament, Frank wows the crowd by breaking one of the top fighter Chong Li's records, achieving the fastest knockout. We are then introduced to American reporter Janice Kent, who's in Hong Kong investigating the Kumite. After Frank saves her, they spend an evening together, but he refuses to take her to the tournament. However, she somehow manages to sneak in the next day, much to Frank's surprise. A key matchup takes place between Jackson and Chong Li. Jackson almost defeats Li, but gets overconfident and is brutally beaten. Chong Li takes Jackson's beloved Harley-Davidson bandana as a trophy. Fortunately, Jackson survives and is hospitalized. Frank vows to defeat Chong Li in his honor. Despite Janice's pleas for Frank to walk away from the violence, he insists that he must win to prove that he is the best. Throughout the film, Helmer and Rollins continues pursuing Frank. With the help of Police Inspector Chen, they eventually track him down. On the final day of the tournament, the agents catch up to him again and attempt to arrest him on the spot. Frank agrees to return with them, but only after he wins the tournament. They agree. Chong Li is introduced first in the finals after legitimately killing his opponent in the semifinals. As the final match begins between Frank Duke and Chong Li, Li, feeling threatened, secretly hides a salt capsule as a backup weapon. Frank takes an early lead in the fight, but in a desperate move, Li crushes the capsule and throws the salt into Frank's eyes. Relying on the training that he received from his sensei, Frank focuses his mind, overcomes his blindness, and ultimately defeats Chong Li, forcing him to submit. Frank wins the Kumite, earning the title of the best fighter in the world. The film concludes with an emotional reunion between Frank and Jackson in the hospital. Frank then says his goodbyes to Janice before boarding a plane back to the United States of America. Believe it or not, this is actually the first time I've ever watched Bloodsport from beginning to end. Now, in the past, I can't say that I'm the biggest Jean-Claude Van Damme fan, but I've definitely seen his movies from time to time. I feel like Bloodsport is a great starting point for anyone who's not too familiar with his work. I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to martial arts, and this movie is from way before the UFC became a thing. But the idea of an illegal martial arts tournament is pretty awesome. Since it's based on a true story, I'm sure these things definitely happen. I've always admired martial arts, and I think they did a really good job conveying the fights on screen. The guy who played Jackson in this movie was hilarious, especially with his line before entering the tournament, "Okay, USA." It wasn't planned now, but Forrest Whitaker ended up being on Video Rental Chaos for 2 weeks in a row. Last week with Species, now with Bloodsport. Definitely a pleasant surprise seeing him in this movie. I really enjoyed Bloodsport, and would definitely rewatch it down the road. I'm also interested in exploring more Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, as he's right up there with Arnold Schwarzenegger in my opinion. So the next time you're in Hong Kong, be careful of the illegal death tournaments. You don't want to die. And until then, we'll see you at the video store.